Why is my YouTube not on dark mode? It's charging my mouse right now.
Today we're going to see who can put on their shoes the easiest. Bill with regular shoes, or Claire with Skechers new Easy Slip-ins. Go! Done! Skechers hands-free slip-ins go on easy and stay on. Let's check on Bill. Try new Skechers slip-ins.
There's no limit to deliciousness when you order on the McD app and get 20% off any purchase of $1 or more every day. Don't hold back. You've got the app. Pick up a crispy chicken sandwich, fries, and a Dr. Pepper and save 20% with the app. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Confession, I don't care about keyboards anymore. Okay, that's hyperbole. I still care, but there has been a change. Nothing about the hobby really excites me anymore like it did back in 2020 and 2021. Back then, I would see the latest hot new thing and I would always think to myself, I want that. But now, nothing does that for me. I don't even watch any keyboard content on YouTube anymore. Combine that lack of interest with the fact that overall I lose money making these videos, and it puts the whole future of this channel in limbo. I've said this kind of thing before in a community post and on my private social media, but I think this is the first time I'm saying it in a YouTube video. I joined the QK65 group by in early April strictly for content purposes. I paid 10,050 Philippine pesos for it, which is now the most I've ever spent on a bare bones keyboard. The plan was to make a video or two with the board and then immediately sell it off at cost. I've learned the hard way that I should probably not be buying in stock or readily available boards to make videos on. When I eventually try to sell them off, I end up losing money because of course, no one's going to pay full price for a second-hand board when a brand new version is readily available. So it's just not sustainable for the channel. I should stick with group buy boards, but I haven't really planned well for this. I don't have any more keyboards incoming. I probably should have joined something else. Maybe I'll try to buy a Freebird DKL off someone who changes their mind about it when those eventually arrive. Hey, keyboard designers, help me out here. I would love to look at some prototypes, dive deep on them, give them a real thorough scrutiny, like I do with all of my videos. I'll be critical but fair. Promise.
No, bring
But
the
back
toy.
to the QK65.
I'm not gonna go get it.
The worst case scenario for this board for me is that I like it so much that I will not want to sell it. Is it that good? Let's find out. Before we continue, let me tell you about this video's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is your one-stop destination for not just everything PCBs, but now any electronics product you can dream up. From conceptualization with a mock-up model, to design, component procurement, manufacturing, testing, and assembly, PCBWay can do it all. When you're ready to get started, head on over to PCBWay.com and fill out their quotation form and be on your way to turning your dream project into reality. Big thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. The QK65 is an aluminum, gasket-mounted 65% custom keyboard from QWERTY Keys, the budget sub-brand of Owl Lab, the makers of the beloved Jelly Epoch and Mr. Suit keyboards. The aim seems to be to bring as much of the greatness of those two venerable boards at a budget price. For a hot swap QK65 with just one plate, you're looking at a $159 price tag, but it might differ depending on your region. Here in the Philippines, the price converts to around $180 to $190 depending on where the exchange rate is now. It's been plummeting. Whatever currency you're spending, you're getting a complete kit, including a set of Owl Lab stabilizers. I picked the black chroma colorway with just the palm plate. I decided not to get any other plates because Clackbait already has a pretty comprehensive comparison of the different plates for this board. This keyboard's design is disappointingly unassuming. It's something that I guess I should have anticipated. I really wanted this board for that fancy multicolored chroma weight, and it is a strikingly beautiful accent piece. But during normal use, the weight is invisible as it resides on the underside of the board. From the top, it just looks like any other aluminum 65%, nearly indistinguishable from something like a Savage 65 or Pizza 65. I know this isn't exactly new or exclusive to this board. Decorative undersides have been a thing forever, and this does point to the fact that people like them. But personally, I guess I don't. I just find it pointless. Photo shoots for social media are nice, and you can just display the keyboard upside down, but I guess what I value above all is in-use looks. And I know that there isn't really much you can do in the way of design flourishes on the top of a layout like this, since there isn't any empty space like you'd get on a TKL or on something like the Iki68 Aurora layout, but it has been done. You could remove some keys to add some kind of badge, although I'm not super fond of this look. You could also do accent pieces like on the Mo 65 or the Box 75, but maybe that would have pushed the price up too far. Ultimately, it comes down to your own personal preference. But keep in mind that this is still on the budget end of the custom keyboard price spectrum. The build process is pretty straightforward. QWERTY has a great build guide that you can follow, so I won't go into too much detail here. There is one step I'd like to highlight though, and they did make a note of this in their build guide. The plate foam sticks out of the perimeter of the PCB on purpose, and you may encounter some problems with closing the case because of this. I did end up having to use a thin plastic spudger to push the plate foam into the bottom case piece. You could just force the case closed,
Get the
but you may end
corner.
up squishing some of that plate foam in between the top and
fuck is
bottom
that?
case pieces, tearing some material
that's what you
off.
get, man.
QWERTY mentions in their build guide that the plate foam acts as a sort of seal for the bottom case and creates a special sound profile. This is pretty interesting. I've always thought of plate foam as kind of negligible in terms of sound, but here it's meant to have a specific effect. We'll explore that later. A couple more things to note. First, I love the fact that this build requires zero adhesive. Normally, you'd get some on the gaskets or the feet or both. And second, when mounting switches without tearing the board down, I did have trouble with the corner switches not seating into the hot swap sockets properly. I know you're supposed to always tear down boards when installing switches so that you can support the hot swap sockets and prevent any from popping out, but I just do not have the time for that with the number of different sound tests with different configurations of keycaps and switches I usually do in these videos. One day I may live to regret that, but so far so good. There is a lot of room to customize on this board, and as much as I would love to explore every little thing, that would just take way too much time and effort. So I decided to pick just 4 components of interest: the PE sheet, gasket type, silicone slab, and plate foam. In order to explore the effect of each of these 4, we'll need a single baseline sound test. Here's how I set it up. GMK laser for keycaps, Gateron Milky Yellow Pros for switches, no standoffs, no PE sheet, no silicone slab, yes Poron plate foam, yes Poron case foam, and finally the short gaskets. For each comparison, we'll be modifying just one of our 4 components of interest to see what effect that component has on sound. The rest of the parameters will stay the same. First up, the PE sheet.
You probably know Vistaprint for business cards. Yeah, we print that. But did you know we also print that and that?
I'm looking for somewhere where there's
Trying to
definitely a
charge my
community
fucking
within.
mouse.
As expected, the board sounds pretty great with the PE sheet. It's nice and talky with that signature staticky PE foam sound. It's not too muted and it's not too loud. A nice, satisfying volume. Compared to the baseline, it's lower pitched and more solid sounding. The spacebar also stands out far more on the baseline, coming up as a kind of regular ding 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 sound, whereas with the PE sheet, it blends in with the rest of the keys, which I prefer. Next up, the gasket type. We've got 2 types to choose from: the short gaskets, also referred to as gasket socks, and the long gaskets, also referred to as gasket jackets. The former is meant to offer a softer typing experience than the latter. This one was pretty surprising. I didn't think there'd be much difference here in terms of sound, but there is. The gasket jackets seem to have had a kind of similar effect as the PE sheet, making the board sound more solid and lower pitched, thockier, basically. But it's not as big an effect as the PE sheet, and I would say it doesn't have that signature staticky sound. I do actually prefer the sound of the gasket jackets over the gasket socks. As for flex or bounce, there's not much. This was a concern for me going into this review, considering this board has its USB port integrated into its PCB. If you look at the port, you can see that the hole in the case is a little bit bigger than the actual USB port, so there
that
is a
happen to
bit of
mine?
room to move. You get flex.
Oh fuck.
It's lively and rockier, basically, but it's not as big an effect as the PE sheet, and I would say it
So, yeah,
doesn't have that
that doesn't
signature
happen to mine. That's
staticky
fucking
sound.
weird.
I do actually prefer the sound of the gasket jackets over the gasket socks. As for flex or bounce, there's not much. This was a concern for me going
feel
into
like I
this
don't see that
review,
often.
considering this board has its USB port integrated into its PCB. If you look at the port, you can see that the hole in the case is a little bit bigger than the actual USB port, so there is a bit of room to move. You get flex cuts on the PCB, but I don't think they're really doing much. You can get a tiny amount of flex when you press down hard, but you can't feel anything while typing normally. And this is true no matter what configuration you choose with the gaskets and sound dampening material. I've still yet to feel any significant flex out of any
That's
board
pretty
during
fucking
normal
cool.
typing, but most of the boards I've used, including this one, are just not known for that. I
Those
think
are
the
actually really
Keychron
nice.
Q1 is the flexiest board I've tried, and even there I would only notice it when immediately going from a stiffer board to the Q1. I may just be too light a typist, or there's something else going on that makes me immune to flex.
Nah.
Next up,
I
the
don't
big
like that
ol'
flex.
silicone sound dampening slab.
That sounds nicer.
I really dislike the way this sounds with the silicone in there. It gets quieter and kind of thinner, like kind of dead sounding. The bassline isn't exactly amazing on its own, but compared to the sound with the silicone, it's lively and bright and just much more appealing to me. And last but not least, we've got the plate foam.
Oh, plate foam sounds nice. That sounds really nice.
The omission of the plate foam has introduced some rather unpleasant metallic pingy sounds. Strangely, it's very prominent on specific keys including U, M, and Escape.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
I'm not really sure what's going on here. Why would this be specific to just those keys? And why does it happen when the plate foam is omitted? One would think that this calls for a force break mod, like you would do on the Keychron keyboards. Does the plate foam sealing the bottom case accomplish the same thing as the force break mod? I do not have the answers, but if you do, feel free to share with the class down in the comments. What I do know is that the sound is infinitely better with the plate foam.
Any key.
I'd like to do one last comparison, but this time we're pitting the QK65 up against my only other 65%, the R1 KBD67 Lite. We'll compare with both the long gaskets and the short.
Ooh, those long gaskets sound nice. I got the banana split switches coming in soon.
With the short gaskets, the two boards actually sound almost identical. The Lite is perhaps slightly higher pitched with a more open, maybe somewhat hollow sound, which is most prominent on the spacebar. With the longer gaskets, the QK65 gets noticeably thockier.
Alright guys, I finally figured out how to build your website the way you actually envision it, and it's called Wix. Now, being Theojo the tech YouTuber, I like to think I know a thing or two about websites. And the main thing I like about Wix is that it doesn't just stop at building the surface level public facing side of a website,
How is it at 50% if it's been charging, dude? What the fuck? Yo, what happened here?
First, let's parse the results of our 4 comparisons. Based on my preferences, there are clear winners for
Oh, I
each
was
of our
about to
4
say,
components of
dude,
interest,
ain't no way that
based
this
solely
is
on
not
sound, as I could not really determine any differences in feel. This is my ultimate QK65 configuration. PE sheet on, silicone slab off, plate foam on, and the long gasket jackets. At the very
Welcome to breaking news. Sentinel is better than the
Sentinel or longbow?
Longbow. Shut the fuck. Revy chat. Rev tag. Welcome in. Welcome. I love you. Sentinel or longbow? Sentinel.
I'll probably use the longbow more than the sentinel, to be honest
Who
with
the
you.
fuck do you think?
Sentinel.
Longbow. I know. Hear me out.
No.
Sentinel. Lungu.
Sentinel's more fun. I'd probably pick a longbow.
Longbow or Sentinel? Sentinel.
Why don't I take elements of this and this and just...
It's crazy though, cause the triple take still hits the hardest.
What are you talking about? You think I'm a joke? You think that you think you're fun?
What do you prefer, Sentinel or longbow?
I think we should go long.
Fuck me.
Yeah, I aspire to edit like this one day.
I don't think you have any idea how fast I am.
It's the longbow versus the sentinel. Which one comes out on top?
You nervous?
No, I'm not.
Sure?
The longbow is significantly faster than any other sniper rifle.
The longbow is going to be the way to go.
You nervous? I don't know, maybe.
These edits are so good.
What the fuck is going on?
You just got beamed.
Every movement, every hop off the wall, every fucking thing is literally on point. It's crazy.
This is brilliant, but I like this.
Longbow? What about you, Ref?
I don't fucking know. I don't know.
I'll ask you one more time.
Whoa, bro, take a step back. Answer my fucking question. Sentinel.
Dude, are you serious?
Sniper ready.
Right in the toe.
Oh, you're scared. 1v1 me, bitch. Oh, sit down. Ronaldo. Same sort of outcoming. Sit the fuck down!
What a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, pleasure to you too, mate.
The Sentinel or the longbow? Now, the Sentinel is definitely better.
Okay, I'm sorry. No. Hey man, back the fuck up and shut your bitch ass up.
There's a chance like a... It's crazy.
Where's my gun? Where's my gun? Where's my gun?
Very, very good weapon that the Indian...
But can you do that?
Bro, I'm gonna put on some Tearsu after this.
What's wrong with you?
Tearsu's literally the fucking best.
I'm stuck in a tree!
What the f- What the f- What?
How the fuck you coming and stealing my shit?
What the fuck are you doing?
RevTech, Sentinel or Longbow. Wait, bro, you are a big streamer, right? RevTech.
Wait a minute, is that even true? I don't believe what you're saying, bro. I don't want to believe.
This game is absolutely fucking terrible.
What's going on?
Another one. Another
One more fucking time.
So fucking pathetic!
Hey guys, hello, hello.
Yeah.
Sentinel or Longbow?
Longbow. Sentinel. Sentinel.
Sentinel. Oh my god, get wrecked.
Wingman.
Sentinel!
Sentinel!
Sentinel.
Sentinel! Sentinel!
I like fish, yeah, I like fish.
Yeah, me too.
Don't speak while playing! Don't speak while playing, guys! Don't speak while playing!
Bro, what?
GPU is AMD Radeon.
What CPU?
CPU.
CPU is Logitech Zen.
I said Logitech. 4090 or PUBG?
Yeah, you're French.
I'm French now.
Yeah, you're French.
Okay, I'm French now, yeah.
I'm gonna ask again.
Now that I have your attention.
You're welcome.
Yeah, his videos are so good.
Markets are down. Buy the dip. Buy the dip.
Sell everything. Sell everything.
Hold on to those stocks, honey.
The world is full of financial noise. Our advisors use insights from global experts to keep your investments on track. JP Morgan Wealth Management.
This is Kate. She lives for Canary Yellow, hates long sleeves, and loves a sale. But you knew that because you use Klaviyo. Email and SMS built for e-commerce.
battery.
Automated flows that drive exponential revenue. All your data in one place. Klaviyo.
Players have a wide selection of equipment to choose from when speccing their character. Teeth, claws, stingers, spikes, each weapon has distinct advantages and disadvantages in combat. Herbivore players tend to favor highly intimidating equipment like horns and antlers. In the African meta, things are taken to the extreme, with builds like the elephant, rhino, and cape buffalo rocking some of the most threatening tusks and horns in the entire game. So you might be surprised to learn that one of the most successful builds in the African savanna is the zebra, a build with no obvious weaponry to speak of. So what is it about the zebra build that has granted it such a dominant position in the savanna? We'll answer that question and many more in today's video, which was sponsored by CuriosityStream.
That's crazy.
To answer that question, let's zoom out a bit and discuss the incredible stats and abilities of the entire
Wait,
equine
what?
faction, including zebras, horses, and donkeys. Let's
Bro,
begin
how
with
is
their
this shit going
stats.
back
Right
down
off the
in
bat, it's
percent,
plain to see that this is a highly mobility-centric build, with an
the
above-average power stat to back it up, with slightly above-average intelligence and fairly poor defense, HP, and stealth stats. At first glance, you might think that these stats belong to a rush-down predator, something like a wolf or eagle, something that can overwhelm its target with speed and power, and either finish the attack before the defender has a chance to counterattack, or weave in and out of the defender's effective range, chipping away at it or tiring it out. Clearly, stats don't tell the whole story here, as all equines are herbivores. So let's delve a little deeper into the abilities and strategies that horses and all their variants utilize to survive. Seeing as their highest stat is mobility, it's no surprise that an equine player's best defense against the predator player's attack is to run away. While not technically as fast as the max speed of a top-tier predator, horse builds are able to maintain high speeds for much longer, and because of this, Builds like the big cat or bear have little chance of catching them without an extremely stealthy ambush. The horse's specialized hooves grant them a bonus to burst movement speed and allow them to ignore the movement penalties of rocky terrain. The likelihood of a successful ambush is driven even lower due to the horse's solid intelligence stat, which allows it to engage in herd behaviors, such as individuals keeping watch to alert vulnerable teammates of approaching enemies. Taking shifts keeping watch is really important in a party of horse players, because horses need to spend massive amounts of time grazing. See, horses did not spec into the ruminant perk, which means they can't extract nearly as much energy from grass as builds like sheep and cows can. This was an intentional trade-off to keep the build much more lean and agile than ruminants, enabling them to dash quickly and jump great distances. But because the amount of time they need to spend feeding with their heads down is around double that of an equivalent-sized ruminant, there's no way they'd be able to avoid an ambush alone. If they do get attacked, the chase begins, and this is where one of the horse's other core abilities comes into play: sweating. Now, I do need to address an inaccuracy I made in a previous video, my most viewed video to date, Are Humans OP?, where I say the ability to sweat is uniquely human. This isn't entirely accurate. Horses also have the ability to sweat in order to dissipate heat. However, they're nowhere near as efficient at cooling down via sweating as humans are, for one main reason: body hair. Sweat doesn't evaporate off of a horse's body as easily as it does a human, because sweat gets trapped in the hair on a horse's body. As such, humans still absolutely crush horses in terms of thermoregulation during distance running, but sweating is still an extremely powerful ability that massively reduces a player's loss of stamina during a run, and thereby greatly increases the potential distance a player can travel. Anyways, if during a chase the horse player finds itself somehow unable to completely avoid an attack, that's when the other signature equine ability comes into play: their kick. Now, in relation to more typical combat moves, like biting, swiping, and stinging, kicking is generally seen as a rather janky attack style, mostly used as either a desperate combo breaker attempt, or the best option available to builds which haven't spec'd their characters to allow for better combat moves. Generally speaking, kicks don't deal that much damage. They're fairly telegraphed and easy to dodge, and they can even throw the user off balance if they miss. However, if we take a look at the horse's kick, we see an entirely different picture. The horse's kick hits with a force of around 2,000 psi, putting it well above the power of a jaguar bite, and just a bit below the power of a crocodile bite. Both of those builds are top tier specifically because of their incredible bite damage, so having a kick of roughly equivalent power is extremely useful. However, plenty of large builds have no issue dealing damage. Moose, elk, wildebeest, and other large ungulate builds can threaten insane damage if they connect with a charging slam. However, attacks like that are incredibly telegraphed, and most players have a decent amount of practice dodging them. In contrast, a horse's kick has incredible frame data, to the point where it's basically unreactable if you're within range, which I should add can be deceptively far. This makes approaching a defending equine player a lot more risky than most herbivore builds. However, the horse's kick has synergies that increase its utility far beyond what can be explained by its base damage and frame data. When it comes to defending themselves from attacking carnivore players, equine builds are at a huge advantage. Let me explain. So, most herbivore builds have only two options when confronted with an adversary: fight or flight. Carnivore players know this, and tailor their strategies to take advantage of the defending player's limited options. When wolves hunt large prey, like elk, their main advantage is to break the defending player's nerve and frighten it into fleeing. They will not commit to an attack if the defending player chooses to stand and fight. However, they will continue to pressure it with bluff charges and fake-outs, hoping to bait out a defensive attack. However, as mentioned before, these counterattacks are slow enough to be dodged on reaction, quickly lowering the elk's morale, especially as the rest of its herd likely gets further and further away. It's only after a prey animal starts fleeing that these predators will actually try to deal damage, by attacking the hindquarters to inflict heavy bleed buildup. In order to stop these attacks, most herbivores will once again stop and turn to face their attackers, which just resets the situation back to the first phase. Horses, zebras, and donkeys can completely thwart this plan of attack, as their kick grants them an extremely valuable option: the ability to counterattack while fleeing. Since they don't need to stop and face their attackers in order to deal damage, and because their kicks are harder to dodge than horn charges, zebras have one of the highest KD ratios against lions and hunting dogs in the game. While it might not be as impressive and showy as having huge horns or antlers, there's no denying that this strategy is extremely effective at warding off attacks and escaping danger. On top of all the other benefits, kicking
Yo, that's
also allows the
fucking
equine player to keep
crazy.
its vitals well out of reach and isn't exposing itself to a critical hit counterattack like some horn users do when they attack. It does have its limitations though. Kicking backwards requires specific positioning, which, unless your character has 360-degree vision, will make your attacks less accurate. And on the odd chance that your opponent does get in front of you and land a grab before you're able to turn away, your options to fight back will be fairly limited, and nowhere near as powerful. Now, I do want to mention that unlike many ruminant herbivores, which only have lower teeth, equine players do possess a
Look at the
full
teeth,
set
look
of
at the
upper
teeth.
and lower teeth that are
Oh,
able to
man.
deliver quite powerful bites.
Oh,
so they aren't completely helpless when
shit.
facing an enemy head-on. But nonetheless, the unidirectional nature of their strongest attack option does mean that some counterplay is available. Next, let's discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the different variants of the equine build. We'll
Not the
start with the
Mustang.
horse, the most well-known of the bunch. Horses undoubtedly have the best base stats of the group, with higher power and more HP being the most obvious things that scale
Damn,
with size.
that thing looks crazy.
They've also got the fastest top speed. However, perhaps even more importantly, the horse's higher intelligence stat enables cross-species team strategies, which can lead to some incredibly broken combos. Zebras have a slightly lower base stat total, although this change isn't really enough to affect their playstyle. They're still perfectly capable of escaping attacks using their speed and endurance, and punishing overly aggressive enemies with a devastating kick. In addition to all this though, the zebra's unique stripe pattern grants it a few extra bonus perks. Because this pattern helps break up their outline and obscure their position, especially when grouped up, attacks against zebras incur a slight accuracy penalty. Surprisingly, this debuff even applies to insects, resulting in zebras taking significantly less damage from parasites than other similarly sized builds. In exchange though, the zebra's intelligence stat is a fair bit lower, to the point where zebras are unable to engage in the same team combos as horses. Donkeys are a bit of an outlier group, with the lowest power stat of the group. They have the highest intelligence stat, but tend to actually prefer solo play. They can be trained to become a useful party member, but they aren't naturally suited to this style of gameplay. And although they're quite capable of dishing out serious damage with their kicks, donkey mains also tend to favor the bite move in combat, a somewhat poorly optimized build in my opinion. It's no surprise that despite horses and zebras having quite solid matchups against both canid and felid opponents, donkeys end up experiencing a fair bit of difficulty, in part due to their smaller size, but also because maybe they just don't realize the potential power of a well-placed kick. Of the three main equine classes, it's a tough call which one I think is the most viable. I think they're definitely all at least high B tier. Personally, I do think horses take the top spot, and I'd even give them the rank of low A tier. See, despite being originally from the North American server, horses have successfully established invasive populations all across the overworld, including places in Africa
These things
that
are
even
fucking big.
zebras
If you've ever
have
been next to
difficulty
a horse,
surviving
these
in.
things are enormous.
This is the premise for the incredible documentary Stallions of the Namib Desert, which
fucking
chronicles the
things are crazy.
descendants of a small group of horses abandoned by World War I
Bro,
soldiers a
this
century
mouse
ago.
takes
This
forever.
documentary is available to watch right now on CuriosityStream,
I really
the
hope it's
sponsor
not
of
fucked
today's
up.
video. CuriosityStream is an amazing subscription streaming service with thousands of high-quality documentaries and non-fiction titles. In addition to Stallions of the Namib Desert, CuriosityStream also has a bunch of my personal favorite documentaries, including Out of the Cradle and Amazing Dino World. In addition, every new CuriosityStream member also gets access to Nebula, a streaming service made by and for creators like myself. I'm currently working hard putting together a brand new, fully 3D animated original Versus series. But in the meantime, I also recommend some of the originals made by fellow creators, such as the Modern Conflict series made by YouTuber Real Life Lore. It's especially relevant
Up
in
to
today's meta.
70 hours.
To get access to both of these awesome services for only $1.25 a month, head to curiositystream.com/tierzu or click the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching, thanks especially to my patrons on Patreon, and until next time, good luck out there.
The other menu was cool. How did I get there? 70 hours. This is not gonna fucking last 70 hours. Watch. I'll stream for like 4 or 5 hours now and it's gonna stop. The rise of suicide boys. Yeah, TikTok.
Great value starting at $6. Only from IHOP. Download the app and earn free food with every order.
At Grand Canyon University, we recognize your commitment to excellence. Our commitment is to deliver online degree programs that can help you pursue the next step in your journey. We salute you. Find your purpose at GCU. Visit gcu.edu/military.
Plants vs. Zombies is one of the most well-known tower defense games of all time. It's well known for implementing the use of lanes, instead of having the enemies simply follow a path. And this led to an entire subgenre of the tower defense genre. But it's impossible to disagree that Plants vs. Zombies has without a doubt lessened in popularity over the years. It fell off, if you will. But we really don't know the full story. Milkman Steve, please go away.
Aw, okay.
So what killed Plants vs. Zombies? EA. Well, not exactly. While EA definitely had a negative impact producing PvZ2, that game was still fairly well received. So while they most definitely played a part in the eventual downfall, EA themselves aren't the single direct cause of it. But to figure out what ruined Plants vs. Zombies, we have to first discuss what brought the series to such a high standing in the first place. And that all starts with the first PvZ game. Plants vs. Zombies was first released on the 5th of May 2009, and this game still holds up as a masterpiece to this day. Every single one of the 49 plants are each unique, each and every one having a different look and feel from every other one of the 48 plants in the game. And the way each one works off of each other is just superb. I believe that a large factor for its success has to be the wide variety of systems you can play it on. While it started as a PC game, Plants vs. Zombies has several console ports as well as a mobile port, and the mobile port is what really made it take off, as it's completely free for anyone to play. You just have to watch ads. The menus in all versions of the game fit the style well, featuring a lot of gravestones to fit the theme of, zombies. And while my favorite UI has to be the one from the PC release of the game, since everything's right in front of you and there's no unnecessary menu navigation, the ports all have that Plants vs. Zombies vibe to them, and nothing looks out of place. Starting the adventure mode shows an opening cutscene of what's next to come, and it hypes up the player and gets them excited to see more of the game. Then you're put here. There's a singular lane of grass that separates the zombies from you. And the game teaches you the fundamentals of how to collect sun and place down plants. And throughout the course of the following levels, the game opens lane after lane until the full map is available. The progression in these first few levels teaches you everything you need to know about how to play the game, but it also leaves the player coming back for more. And even after these first few introductory stages, the gameplay loop continues to be packed with content, with nearly every level giving you a brand new plant to try out, and learning how to utilize each plant to the best of its ability leads to a lot of fun tinkering. And that constant stream of content is what makes playing the game for the first time completely unmatched. Although I will say, after beating the game at least 10 times over the years, the general gameplay loop of place sunflower, place attacking plant, place nut, then you beat the zombies, yay! Definitely gets boring after doing it for so many years, but the game is ready for that, so every time you start to get bored, the game ends up changing the general loop of things. For the 5th level of every world, the game chooses to give you a special item instead of a plant. These give you more game features, like the Almanac, a book where you can find the deep lore of the game, or the shop, where you can buy the best plants in the game. And instead of having to play through the usual routine, you get to play a fun little minigame, whether it's walnut bowling, whack-a-zombie, Big Trouble Little Zombies, Vase Breaker, and, that one with the chompers. Each of the minigames used in adventure mode are unique, and end up being some of the most memorable levels in the whole game. Of course, besides for the most part, the final battle sequences are nothing to write home
There's
about.
9 levels.
Every 10th
Fuck
level,
those.
the game replaces the seeds you select with a conveyor belt of random plants that you get throughout the course of the world. These are fine, but it's not too much of a change from the regular formula. But then there's Worlds 4 and 5. World 5's is the final boss, obviously, but World 4 has no reason to have such a cool finale. For the entire world, you have to deal with having less sight because of the fog. But then for the finale, the fog is lifted, but the problem still remains due to the storm that's taking place. So you need to either take shots in the dark and hope you place the plant correctly, or wait till the next lightning strike to take place. And how can we forget the greatest character in all of media? Crazy Dave. Dave is your wacky neighbor, who hops in every once in a while to give you some exposition or to tell you how to do things. And while some may find him annoying, I personally think he's stupid enough to be funny, but not stupid enough to be, well, you know, Stupid. And besides, he's the owner of the shop that may or may not be the trunk of his car. Each and every world in Plants vs. Zombies has a unique gimmick. The day world is just your run-of-the-mill gameplay, having sun fall from the sky, thus allowing it to be slightly easier. The whole world is pretty.
What is Outplay? You play and it records. You can choose exactly what you want it to record, whether it be kills,
Escape to Discovery Cove. Let the rest of the world disappear as you dip below the surface and lose yourself in Orlando's
pretty much just designed to teach you the basics of the game. The second world is pretty much the same thing as the first, taking place in the same yard. However, it takes away an essential element of the world before it, that being sunlight. You don't realize how important getting sun from the sky is until the game takes it away from you, and this leads to having a much slower startup than in the first world. But that's not the only thing the second world has to offer. We're also introduced to graves, which spawn zombies at the end of each level to add on to the already quite chaotic final wave. The third world brings us back to the daytime. I've always appreciated how World 3 negates the use of the plants from the second world. Yeah, you know those plants that you just used to great effect? Well, fuck you! It's daytime now, so you gotta go back to your old friends from the first world. However, it also has 6 lanes instead of 5. Lily pads are very important here, as without them, you wouldn't be able to place plants on the water, which allows zombies to basically walk inside of your house. World 4 brings back the mushrooms. Remember those guys? But as previously mentioned, there's fog that hides a decent chunk of the playing field from you, and you have to use certain plants to clear up the fog. And of course, the fifth world has you using flower pots and catapults to get around having to use your plants on the roof. This also happens to be the world where the most powerful type of zombie is introduced, the Gargantuar. The ending to the game is also extremely rewarding. After fighting your way through 49 levels of the zombie onslaught, you eventually make your way to the final boss, the Zombot. While it isn't the hardest boss to ever
this one is actually
the
easy.
final battle is a rock-solid finale to the game, mixing the same tower defense formula we're used to, while still introducing brand new mechanics and threats throughout the fight. And the animation for defeating Zomboss is also a very nice touch. And the reward for beating the game is excellent. I didn't know I needed to see a music video for a silly song that happens to work perfectly for the game, but I know I do now, and as you can see, there wasn't a big team behind the game. The credits are just a little blurb of text scrolling, then it's gone. And how can we forget all these bonus game modes and great mini games you unlock after beating the adventure mode?
That shit was
like
the
Bejeweled and Bejeweled, but worse. But really, there's so many mini-games that are memorable, and even more replayable than the adventure mode itself. The console ports also add exclusive mini-games, specifically in the DS version.
Cool.
In that game, there's a mini-game you could unlock called Air Raid, and it pretty much functions as a DS version of the plain bosses from Cuphead. The console version's also got a versus mode, which to this day continues to be an exclusive to the Xbox, PS3, and Nintendo DS versions. However, you can still play the console versions on PC via emulators. And the puzzle mini-games and survival modes are also a really nice touch. Unfortunately, the PC version is many years out of date, and it's literally the worst version of the game. It doesn't have the multiplayer fun from the versus mode, and it doesn't have the same amount of mini-games and achievements as the mobile version. The PC version was kinda left dead in the water after years of neglect, but nonetheless, it's still a fantastic game to this day. Plants vs. Zombies is a game easy enough for anyone to play and beat it, yet engaging enough for someone like me to still find enjoyment playing the game, even after so many years. So with that, I think it's easy to tell why Plants vs. Zombies is the single highest rated tower defense game of all time. The lane mechanic, unique concept and characters, and it has an overflow of content to boot. It's also on so many different platforms that it's difficult to have not heard of it. So, seeing the immaculate success of Plants vs. Zombies, and PopCap as a whole, on July 12, 2011, EA would acquire PopCap for $650 million. Now, EA is a company pretty much known for buying studios and then running them into the ground. 2 years before this, they shut down Pandemic Studios, which was known for the Destroy All Humans games and the original Star Wars Battlefront games. I guess this just serves as a bit of foreshadowing. 4 years later, PopCap, now owned by EA, released the second Plants vs. Zombies game, Plants vs. Zombies 2, It's About Time. And while it took many years after release to fully finish the game, and added all the worlds and other game modes, we finally have it in a completely finished state. As a game, Plants vs. Zombies 2 is alright, but as a sequel, it's almost perfect. The game takes place throughout the course of human history, and each world takes place in a different era, like Ancient Egypt, Far Future, Pirate Seas, the Dark Ages, and Sky City. it expands on every aspect of the original game, and the scope as a whole is much wider here, with each world being 25 levels instead of the usual 10. Wait, why are there 32 levels in Big Wave Beach? However, the grandeur status the game goes for also leads to a lot of flaws. Because there are so many levels per world, it leads to these moments where at times you have to go up to 5 levels before you even get access to a new plant, which makes the game feel repetitive to play at points. To fix this, they added these special levels with clear conditions, and while I like them for the most part,
so many new things to protect in life. A little care helps to keep things alright. Nationwide is on your side.
Got a heli incoming.
What?
I can't help but feel like the game overuses them as a crutch to avoid adding more unique levels. The first game also has points like these, but due to getting a new plant each and every level, you never get bored of the formula as long as you're unlocking new things. But everything else aside, I think the biggest problem with this game is that it's a mobile game. And while some might say that Plants vs. Zombies 1 was also a mobile game, while that's technically true, Plants vs. Zombies is not a mobile game. It's a PC game that happens to function excellently with a touchscreen. Plants vs. Zombies 2, on the other hand, was designed specifically for mobile. In fact, there isn't even an official port for PC or consoles. To this day, it's continuing to be exclusive to mobile, where it suffers with all the issues that every money-hungry mobile game has nowadays. There are ads after finishing every level, there are microtransactions, and the game sells out a ton. The UI has these free rewards advertised all over it, and it comes across as a bit scummy. Each and every one of these issues combined significantly reduces the quality of the game, and makes it an overall worse experience to the player. There's still a lot of neat things here, but I feel like I can't really praise the game as confidently as I can with the first. This game introduced a leveling feature, which is single-handedly responsible for a ton of those clickbait videos.
Like they weren't even working on it, they were just enjoying the revenue.
Hi, bro! I need your support! Please like this video and comment 666! I will release the next video as soon as possible. Thanks you, everyone! They reworked the Zen Garden. Why did they rework the Zen Garden? The game has a lot of unique plants and zombies as well, but it ends up running into a bit of a problem with the later worlds. With the first game only having 49 plants, it was able to have every single plant fulfill a purpose that felt meaningful. Here are some examples. Sunshroom allows for quick replacements at the beginning of a night, but Sunflower can upgrade to Twin Sunflower. Repeater and Threepeater are both pea shooters, but they're also way more expensive than a pea shooter. With Plants vs. Zombies 2, I don't feel any of that. At the end of Ancient Egypt, you unlock Twin Sunflower, and because they removed the purple plant feature, you're now able to just get double the sun right away, and it makes regular Sunflower completely irrelevant. Same thing goes with most of the primal plants. They're often just better versions of their normal counterparts. And don't even got me started on paid plants. So for some reason, to get all the plants in the game about plants and zombies, you have to pay $7 for each individual plant. And with 16 paid plants, you're looking at spending over $100. And just as a final fuck you from EA, there's still no way to remove ads. It doesn't help that after making it to the third world, every time I got an ad, the game would proceed to softlock, thereby making the game straight up unplayable.
Wow,
a redeeming quality,
ridiculous.
though, are the bosses. While the Zombot was a fantastic fight, the other robots in PvZ2 show up in every world and are all different in a handful of ways, all of which using the gimmicks from the worlds that they're a part of. I actually like these guys. They're good. In my opinion, Plants vs. Zombies 2 is where the cracks begin to show in the foundation. The game itself is really solid, and you can tell that there was a ton of work and effort put into the game, but I'm sure someone at EA was pressuring for all this mobile game scumminess to be added. I don't believe the game designers intentionally chose to butcher their own game. Or at least, I hope they didn't. After this point, the series gets a bit weird. Instead of going for the usual tower defense style, they chose for the next Plants vs. Zombies game to be in the form of a third-person shooter. And while it sounds like it's a bad idea, to change the entire genre of a game in an already existing franchise, they actually saw great success with this change in format. That game is Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare. People actually really liked this game. Now, I can't play it for myself because it's not on Steam, but from memory, I remember having a good time playing this game.
It's
there are
raining
two main
right
game
now,
options,
so
Garden Ops and multiplayer. In Garden Ops, you have to fight through 10 waves of zombies, with various types of zombies, and also boss fights. Between rounds, it incorporates elements from the original tower defense games, like planting, and like the first PvZ game, there's a lot of content in Garden Warfare due to the various game modes, like Team Vanquish, Gnome Bomb, Welcome Mat, and Taco Bandits,
like
which are all parodies of your typical FPS game modes. Then, in February 2016, they made a second one, Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. And this one was somehow even more well received than the first game. PopCap took a similar approach Nintendo did with Mario Galaxy 2. They took what made the first one so good and made more of it. More characters, more game modes, more cosmetics, and more microtransactions. Mr. EA's gotta make that money somehow, am I right? But it still ends up being a really good game. Again, it pretty much expands on everything.
I actually like
this game. Both end up being solid additions to the series. Then Plants vs. Zombies Heroes kinda just existed one day. And in my opinion, it's the black sheep of the PvZ franchise. I think this might just be where PopCap and EA finally dropped the ball, as I rarely ever see anyone talking about this game. Ever. The game was released in October of 2016. Once again, PopCap and EA have decided to reinvent the series, and at that point, it had been 3 years since the launch of PvZ 2, so people have been waiting quite a while for a new tower defense. Game. And when people saw that this was not a tower defense game and instead a card game, they just forgot about it. Personally, I don't mind this game. It's a neat change of pace compared to the rest of the series. It kinda did the opposite of what PvZ 2 did. Instead of expanding the scope of the game, PvZ Heroes prides itself in being a less stressful and more laid-back experience. Basically, you play missions, collect cards, and build your deck. There are plenty of heroes to choose from, all of which have a different deck tied to them, and you can even play as the zombies. The gameplay itself uses a unique turn-based system. The zombies take priority and go first, just like how the gameplay loop in the base Plants vs. Zombies games involves building a defense from the zombies, which show up to get you. Then the plants have their turn, where you can put up your defense, and then you get to watch the whole thing play out. Different plants and zombies have different abilities, and each new round gives one more sun than the last. The same thing goes off for the zombies, except they get brains instead of sun. It's a pretty fun and addicting game, honestly, but the whole thing feels a bit cheap presentation-wise. You can tell that they were less ambitious with this game rather than the others in the series, and I could say the same thing about the budget. Some can make the criticism that it's just a Hearthstone ripoff with a PvZ skin, and others are Danerade.
Well, Terror, I don't know what you're talking about. Plants vs. Zombies Heroes isn't that bad. For being a PvZ game built from the ground up for mobile, they really utilize the hardware well. And that must be emphasized. Not at all pay-to-win experience that puts a new fun twist on the traditional Plants vs. Zombies formula.
Wow, thank you Danerade from the website youtube.com. Very cool. So Plants vs. Zombies Heroes is a fine enough game, but the issues all come down to it not being what the people want. And at this point, the audience is kinda split between 2D tower defense games and 3D third-person shooters. So then PopCap and EA then go silent for the next 3 years, and let their already released games continue to provide revenue through ads and microtransactions. Then, in summer of 2019, they released Battle for Neighborville, so people were hyped. It's been well over 3 years since the second Garden Warfare, so it was about time for another third-person shooter. The way to separate this one from the other two is that this one is bad. So as it turns out, releasing a game with no content isn't very good. The Plants vs. Zombies series was well known for having a ton of content in each and every game, yet there was nothing here. Unlike the Garden Warfare games, this one decided to focus a lot more on PvE stuff. However, from what I've heard, the cosmetics being rewarded aren't a good enough incentive to keep playing the game, and and the missions in the game are quite boring. So yeah, people really didn't like this one. In February of 2020, they released the soft launch for Plants vs. Zombies 3. People were pretty excited, as at that point, it's been about 7 years since the last tower defense game. Then they saw the game, and there were a few issues. Sunflowers were completely reworked. The game's now in portrait mode, and the new art style looks a tad bit ugly. Two of these issues were caused by the game once again going after the mobile market. The graphical transition from the PvZ2 cartoony designs to 3D models could have definitely been a smoother transition, and due to the community backlash, PopCap was about to be burned at the stake. But thankfully, PopCap actually decided to take the game down and rework it. Over a year later, in September 2021, the game was once again put out into the world. This time, it played a lot more like the first two games. The aspect ratio was fixed, the visuals now look a lot nicer, and serve as a good progression of the Plants vs. Zombies art style. The way sun works is practically the same as the last few games, but instead of getting 25 sun per sun, or 50 sun per sun, this game has you collecting sun 1 to 1. And while it certainly looks a bit weird to see, I actually don't mind it. Although I will say, from the gameplay we've seen so far, it seems more like a retread of the original material than anything else. It's almost like now they're scared of change after the backlash they got from changing too much of it the first time. I'm hoping that the game gets a decent amount of new features later on, as the last thing you want for a sequel to do is to go backwards on the scale and mechanics. It's not terrible anymore, although I will say there's still a lot to work on. By now, the Plants vs. Zombies name has definitely lost a large chunk of its former glory. Is it still redeemable? I believe so, but until we start to see some actual good-looking, high-effort games with actual content again, I won't hold my breath. So what killed Plants vs. Zombies? While it's impossible to point to one specific thing, I think it was the transition from the goal being to make a high-quality game, to instead making a game to get as much money as possible. And EA definitely had a hand in that. But I also think it was how far the series branched out. Each of these games has a specific fan base, but overlap between the fan bases isn't guaranteed. I think that they roamed too far from where they began, and that's how we ended up here. Plants vs. Zombies will always be one of my favorite game franchises of all time. But seriously, PopCap, just give us what we all want. Make Plants vs.
Let's see.
On the evening of December 28th, 2016, Don Fluitt was on his way back to his Albuquerque, New Mexico home with his 11-year-old daughter, Sienna. The two had been visiting Don's mother in California for Christmas. They made a quick stop at Don's home before Don would take Sienna to meet up with her mother, Christine, who was Don's ex-wife. After dropping Sienna off with her mother, Christine, Don then headed back towards his home. A few hours had passed, and any contact from Don went silent, and so his daughter Sienna quickly became concerned. Despite seeing her dad hours earlier, Sienna was a bit worried when he did not call that night to say goodnight, as apparently it was something that Don did every night. When Sienna did not hear from her dad again the next morning, she immediately called his work and learned that he had not gone in. Two of his co-workers reassured Sienna that Don was likely completely fine and that they would go to his house to check up on him. So that's exactly what they did. When they arrived at Don's home and knocked on the door, Don did not answer. They then entered the home through a side door and yelled for Don with no response. They then did a quick walkthrough of the home until entering Don's garage. This is when they would find the body of 54-year-old Don Fluitt lying on the garage floor due to what appeared to be the result of so-called homicidal rage. Don Fluitt was found with severe injuries to his head and a deep cut along the side of his neck. He laid on the garage floor, face up, surrounded in a disproportionately small puddle of blood. Don's co-workers then quickly died.
Let's see, let's see what this mouse is about, baby. Let's give it a shot. into a custom match real quick. Feel this mouse out. See how this feels. Okay, so wow, my aim is so ass. No.
Match found.
Oh. Yo, what map is this? What?
Fracture, big man.
this Logitech app again. Let's keep an eye on my battery. So I have to switch mouses, I will. We'll see about that, buddy. We'll fucking see about that, mate. Give me a fucking 60 hours. Fucking 60 hours left on this shit.
Sage, I'll teach you how to control my seekers if you teach me how to raise the dead. Fair trade, I reckon. Help a girl out, would you? Cheers, mate.
Probably.
Here. Walk out. Blinded.
Planting
it.
Spike planted.
What are you shooting at?
One dead.
What the fuck was that? Yo, what the fuck was that?
I am not just your healer.
That was actually so funny, bro. That was just... How did they remake? That's pretty lame. Yeah, let me change back to English. What the fuck? Bitch, my language says English. What the fuck? What's in my store? Nothing. What the shit? Let's see if it goes back to English now. Should. Fuck is my game? Let's see. Update Valorant. Oh fuck. Which one is it? Can't see my fucking keys. You know what? That's too much. Let's fucking play the game. Let's go. Well, everything's back in English at least. I'm so used to having. Switch my crosshair color.
On the evening of December 28th, 2016, Dawn
Match found.
Where's the fire?
Match found.
Alright, where's the fire?
I'm sorry, Phoenix, you cannot afford me.
I'm out of here.
Stage 55.
Hey, Omen.
Spike down, B.
Blinded.
Last player standing. Spike planted.
Yes, grounded.
Team Ace.
NT.
Burn bright, Phoenix. Here.
Player standing.
Make sure to follow my pack in. They'll lead us right to the enemy. I got yous, okay? Look out! Blinded.
Here, enemy spotted.
Spike planted. Last player standing.
stuff. I'm out of stuff.
Spike down. Defender spawn. Player standing.